I'm Pastor Senn. Have you ever been in a church service where the sermon seems to drag on and on and on? Maybe you're the guy that's delivering that sermon. You're preaching your heart out and you're watching as your audience is slowly drifting to a place to where they're not catching a single thing that you're trying to communicate. What do you do? Today we're going to talk sermon preparation. You're probably thinking, sermon preparation? Preacher, don't you mean sermon delivery? If I'm putting my audience to sleep, I need to work on sermon delivery. While sermon delivery is important, if you don't have anything to say, it really doesn't matter how you say it, you're going to lose your audience. A sermon that is constructed well is going to hold the attention of your congregation. Your message is going to be communicated, and at the end of the day, you want your message communicated and you want to see lives changed. I'd like to give you several things to consider as you develop your sermon. First, let me mention your starting point. I've been asked often where I find inspiration for the subject that I've just preached on. Did you hear someone else preach something similar? Did you find that outline in a book? Perhaps the internet is where you found that message. The answer is no. We live in a get-it-as-quick-as-you-can society, and unfortunately that practice has found its way into our pulpits. Get it quick and just enough to get by, those are deadly practices for any preacher. Always remember, our congregation expects to hear from God, not us. And God wants to feed His children. God knows what His children need to eat, and He knows when they need to eat it. Therefore, my inspiration has to come from the one that I'm speaking for. The starting point for every sermon begins with prayer. Lord, give me direction. My own personal experience, that prayer is answered during my own personal devotions. God really does speak to us through His Word. Sometimes God will give me an idea and I'll just jot it down on a scrap piece of paper. I'll meditate on that thought for a little while, and before you know it, we're off and running. The second thing that we should consider is our vision. Know your vision. At this point in my preparation, I already know where I want to end up. That place is the place where my audience must make a choice. Entertainment should never be the focus of any sermon. Decision is where you want to end up. Whether I have 1 point or 10 points, each of those points must complement the vision. Sometimes each point will be a decision point by itself, but sometimes each point is just a stepping stone to bring my audience to a single decision at the end of the message. This could be difficult, but if you stay on point without wandering from that vision, it could be quite effective. This leads us to our third point. Keep your dialogue flowing. Too many rabbit trails are your enemy. Rabbit trails lead the audience away from your vision, and many preachers wander off their path and they never really return. This confuses your listeners and they lose the vision of your message. Your rabbit trail is probably good, but is it necessary now? Perhaps this information is best left for your next sermon. Connect your points in such a way that it's easy for your congregation to recognize the path. With that in mind, don't be afraid to let your message evolve. Perhaps at the starting point of your sermon, you had a vision in 3 main points. You think that your task is now only to fill in the dialogue underneath each point, trying to make it flow with the previous point. But what happens when you're preparing and something else is revealed as you study? Something you didn't consider in the beginning? What do? Don't be afraid to change your direction. Oftentimes, the 3 points I start the preparation process with are not always the 3 points I use. When I study, often the Lord directs me to an area that I hadn't thought about just yet. But never forget, as your sermon evolves, you have to maintain your flow. Finally, always close with a challenge. Without a challenge, you've just given another boring lecture. From the initial stages of your preparation, you've been waiting to get to this place. This is the place of decision. Make the most of it. Give your audience a reason to come to the altar. I've always considered the invitation the most important part of our service. People are saved at the altar. Decisions are made at the altar. Lives are changed at the altar. The altar is the place where we get to respond to what the Lord has been communicating to our hearts about ever since we sat down. Preacher, please give people a reason to come. It's important. This is why you've preached this message. I hope these few points will help you. And it's my prayer that God will bless you. And may your next sermon be the best sermon you've ever preached. If you like this video, hit the like button. And if you'd like to subscribe, by hitting that subscribe button, you'll be notified the next time a video is uploaded to this channel. Once again, may God bless you. And may your next sermon be your best sermon yet.